I am Captain Spawn, and this is day 335 of Spawn Year. Freakadoo has been digging through the trash all day, looking for things to help him pass the time. 3 days here, and even a nut job who tells himself stories about crocodiles who enter the Olympics with their own bobsled team can get bored. I told him he wouldn't find much. Everything I've ever thrown in that garbage can seems to disappear eventually. But it seems if you keep digging past what looks like the bottom, there's a mountain of refuse that continues on underground, in a tunnel that might just never end. I think Spawn Year is trying to trick me into forgetting my work and go exploring, which only solidifies my resolve not to miss an issue. I'm not taking the bait, and with Freakadoo lost in whatever catacombs may lie beneath these alleys, I'm free to review today's issue in peace. Perhaps I'll get lucky, and he won't be able to climb back out. If I were Todd McFarlane's editor, well, first off, there would be fewer typos, but secondly, I would cut so many words, this comic would be half as long. Ever since he came back on the book, I've been putting all the blame for the long-winded, extraneous dialogue on McFarlane, which may not be altogether fair. After all, for the first few issues of Endgame, Brian Hallwin had a co-writing credit, but he never did much to make his presence known. It's always felt like McFarlane was back in the driver's seat, and now that he's steering solo, there's really no difference from when he allegedly had a backseat driver. So much awkward phrasing, so many juvenile high school level exchanges, it reads like McFarlane just needs to spend a few hours sitting in a coffee shop observing people to remind himself what an actual conversation sounds like. Heck, my conversations with Freakadoo sound more natural than this. I have to wonder if, when McFarlane talks about sophisticated storytelling, he doesn't really mean just putting 400 words in every dialogue balloon. Okay, so he's gotten rid of narration boxes and it's not a novel with pointless pictures in the way anymore. I appreciate that, but he just took all that space he used to fill with boxes and is now filling it with balloons. In this issue, we meet the mob boss who owned the shady hospital Jim was at that exploded. He's freaking out, trying to figure out how that happened and who is after them. He speaks with Gilbert Sanchez, the guy who sent thugs to Jim's apartment, and finds out one of his men gave away the ultra-secret existence of Patient 47 out to this guy who thought he was doing a good thing by locating Jim for the mob boss, Nortego. But he ends up getting killed by way of fiber wire, as if taken out by Agent 47, because he had information Nortega trusts no one with but his own tight-knit operation. This is your standard backroom show how tough the bad guy is scene. Meanwhile, Jim's out busting skulls trying to find Sanchez and isn't getting anywhere. Clown has escaped from jail with the vampire Claudio, and Mark gets a call from an anonymous source who tells him the miraculously recovered guy who's unaccounted for that he's looking for is Jim Downing. And finally, Jim goes to one of Sanchez's thugs' house and it explodes. On paper, this probably sounds like a reasonable amount of story for a single issue. Potentially, lots of intrigue and mystery could be infused into this. But because so much of the language is wooden and everyone sounds the same, and because there's no deliberate pacing to these scenes and they all just hang there too long, it feels like very little is actually happening. Here are a couple examples of things I thought were weird phrasing and word choice that interrupt the momentum of a scene sometimes. We've spent too many years building this up to get where we are, and now someone's trying to take that. What? We'd have found him sooner, but since there aren't any meaningful records of his existence, medical nor otherwise, the hospital personnel we spoke with were just as baffled as we were at first. Were there any unmeaningful records? Wouldn't a record that told you anything at all about a man who doesn't seem to exist be meaningful? And really, nor otherwise? In another book, these odd choices in speech and downright ignorant lapses in grammar might be useful clues about Sanchez's personality. But here, I don't know when it's intentional and when it's a mistake because it happens with nearly everybody. The rule about dialogue in fiction, and that's all I'm discussing today because that's all we have here, is don't write anything that doesn't reveal something about character or plot, and mostly character. Only use dialogue for exposition when it's the only way to give pertinent information, and if it can come across in a natural way. There's some forced exposition here and there, and lots of simply cuttable lines and words, but what we're not told also sometimes feels forced. McFarlane has to avoid having Ortego use Patient 47's real name, or even express whether or not he knows it to keep the reader in the dark. I'm not sure what he knows, and of course that's the point, but why not just have him say Downing, since that's what he was called in the hospital? After all, if Sanchez had never heard the title Patient 47, he wouldn't have had to be fiber-wired. Oh, here comes Freakadoo again. Why couldn't he have stayed underground for a couple days? Or better yet, why couldn't he have gotten lost? Signed, Captain Spawn.